It is hard for me to believe that if they have the technical capacity to, for example, very easily get the serial number of every dollar bill that passes through their hands and send that upstream to the central bank, that they do not.
Edward Snowden, the controversial figure who leaked highly classified information from the National Security Agency, or the NSA, in 2013, which revealed numerous global surveillance programs, gave an extensive interview to Marta Belcher of Filecoin Foundation for Camp Ethereal 2022. He discussed two interesting topics: how governments view crypto as an evolving threat and how crypto transforms power relationships. He detailed how the use of the dollar, from a surveillance perspective, is a public-to-private transaction, meaning once we use the dollar, it's put on a ledger and the private, government, can't see every transaction and use that information. But with crypto, and why the government is freaking out about it, is because now crypto provides a public-to-public transaction, which is to say, we all have the same information and can use it how we see fit. Listen to what he has to say.
Every dollar bill, right, is serialized. And when you go to very expensive bank machines at very sophisticated banks, and, it counts all the bills and whatnot, they might check all of these dollar bill serial numbers in their machine locally to make sure they don't repeat, right? But they weren't particularly networked. Now, all of these machines that you can buy commercially yourself, just for a cash counter at home, have optical character recognition that photographs every bill, like scans every bill very rapidly, because, they're counting hundreds of bills in different spectrums, right? It'll take like a UV shot, an infrared shot, a normal optical shot. And they look at things like the little anti-counterfeiting bands on there. They look for reflectivity to make sure that these are legitimate bills. But they also look at those serial numbers. And actually in the machine itself, it populates a database of every bill that it is scanned in a format that is designed to be networked and shared to, any other ones these have. And I have a suspicion, this has never been sort of publicly established, I'm not even aware of any reporting that's going into this, I may have just missed it. When you think about the way, at least the U.S., incredibly invasive sort of financial network operates with all of these, anti-money laundering and know your customer impositions, that we have, huge amounts of staff allocated in every bank, or like, risk management or assessment or whatever they want to call it, compliance and so forth. And then, or sort of, when I say central bank, I don't mean the U.S. central bank. I'm not talking about the Federal Reserve, right? I'm talking about the central branch of the bank, these commercial banks, right? And then when you think at their headquarters, whoever is running their department for this kind of stuff, they have a database with all the movements of all the money that they've touched, that they don't cross-reference this with others in their industry, right? And if they're cross-referencing this with others in their industry, it's very likely that they're also sharing this information with the government. And so we have this presupposition that cash is anonymous, that we have inherited from a time when meaningfully it was, that is no longer true, right? And when you think about sort of Bitcoin having a public ledger, well, once a dollar enters the banking system, there is a private ledger that is available to the people who are performing financial surveillance. So it's really just private to the public, but it's public to the prominent, shall we say. And I think this is where a really sort of interesting change is happening with cryptocurrencies that exist today and cryptocurrency with where it's headed. As it is today, these sort of serialized physical currencies are universally tracked and monitored, right? We don't know by who, we don't know by how, but we know the capability is cheap, and we know it's omnipresent. And if it is cheap and omnipresent, someone somewhere is making use of it. But we, the public, cannot benefit from that broadly. We can't see this. We can't do anything like that. Whereas when you look, for example, like on the Bitcoin blockchain, that public ledger is an even playing field. yes, you get chain analysis people and whatnot who are, doing fairly devious things with it. But you could be doing the same thing with it. We see people using it for, trying to get a financial edge out of the on-chain analysis and things like that for, are these old coins moving or have these been lost, or, to make some kind of inferences from that basis. Well, as we improve on the pre-existing systems, and as we move to, these sort of smart contracts and improvements on the Bitcoin thing, like we've got Zcash and whatnot, we've got Monero. There's Ethereum, which suffers from the same sort of privacy problems as Bitcoin, but then it's also got things like Tornado.cash, which would be wonderful if an Ethereum transaction didn't cost, $2,000, dollars every time you want to mint an NFT or something like that. But just I went kind of on long there. What people are really missing as they get down in the weeds is how transformative the power relationships, or how much the power relationships are going to transform as we move from these legacy technologies to these sort of future decentralized technologies. The risk is very easy to illustrate. If you remember cartoons, like the DuckTales, Scrooge McDuck, there's one guy who's got a giant vault full of coins and dollar bills and things like that. And if he needs money, like a giant magnet comes out of the top of it and it just pulls dollars out of everybody in the town's pockets. That is what a CBDC is, right? And that's really all it is. What I mean by a crypto-fascist currency is we don't realize that we have immediately been subordinated and collectivized to the central actor in the economy. The dollar is that today in its electronic form. But the cash sort of physical legacy form of it, while it does have all of these sort of limitations that I mentioned as it enters sort of the complex financial system, when you go down to McDonald's, right, who knows, actually, McDonald's is a little too sophisticated these days. Maybe I shouldn't use that example. When you go down to the bodega, right, or the deli, and you buy a ham and cheese, the guy who presses the button on the register that's been there since 1975, and, the till pops out and he puts the dollar in and gives you another dollar back, that still works regardless of what the government is interested in. As we move towards increasingly electronic versions of cash, and we are using electronics and electronic platforms and electronic accounts and centralized services, those permissioning gates that I mentioned before, our freedom from permission becomes ever more finite and ever more limited. And increasingly, we're being asked to step more through these gates. And that is a tremendous concern.
What do you think of Snowden here? Leave a comment. If you found value in the content, please like the video as that greatly helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.